everyone has a handout. Did everyone receive a handout at their spot?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mike, please.
Sir.
Can you rate,
Thank you, sir.
the instructor's information on the board?
Yes, sir. So while some of this preliminary stuff is being written up on the board, if you can open up your packet to page 1, and there's a section that says Diversity 101 in the Paradigm, and there are 2 questions there. One is, what is diversity, and why is diversity important? If you can answer those 2 questions in the next couple of minutes or so, as I write the agenda on the board and whatnot, that will be helpful.
Thank you, Cadet Lee.
Yes.
Let's go one short.
One short?
Anyone else before?
All right. So I'll stop you right where you are. I want these, the notes that you take will be a reference for you. We may not get through all of the pieces, but they are definitely things that I want you to think about as we move along together. This will be the first of 4 meetings where we will be gathered to kind of talk about your personal growth and development around some of this diversity stuff. And so let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, my name is Andre Cohen, and I have been working with, first of all, let me tell you that it is an honor and a pleasure to be in front of you. I think that there is a special breed and type of individual who comes to law enforcement that needs to be celebrated. And oftentimes, particularly in the community, you're not celebrated. Where there are rules and laws, there is safety. And I think it's, I can't give you enough praise for the things that you do, and I thank you for stepping up and doing things that others either aren't brave enough or aren't equipped with the right tools to do. So that's That's my first thing. The second thing is that I also think it's important that that I stand before you because at some point you may, I don't have children yet, but you may run into my children and you see their last name Cohen and you go, oh yeah, I know your dad, you know, and so that it's very selfish of me. All right. And so, so with that, let's answer these two questions. So what is diversity? Yes, sir.
A divergence of a group of varying people, race, sex, religion, culture.
Okay. Does someone have a different definition? Yes.
Diversity is the difference between, or the different beliefs, values, and
Okay. So different values and characteristics of our society. Does someone else have another definition? Yes, sir.
The union of multiple cultures joining together, utilizing personal traits for the better of the group.
Okay. So the say that again.
The
Union of multiple groups, right? So it's the union of multiples. All right. I saw another hand. Yes.
I left it vague. I said it is difference between people because that can encompass like backgrounds, culture, anything like that, gender. So I left mine very vague.
Okay. All right. So just in this room, I've asked for a definition of a term, and I've gotten how many answers? At least 7, right? Now, if I ask 100 people what diversity is, how many answers do you think I will get?
100, sir.
Yes, and our lawyers say 200, right? Because some folks can't make up their mind, right? So what does that tell you about the word diversity? What's that?
Very broad, sir.
It's very broad, and what else? Yes, ma'am.
Other people have a different view on it. It might not be the same. We're all
So,
different.
yep, so we all have a different view on it, which, okay, so when I was in college, we had this rule. And so I lived in an apartment with about 4 guys. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. It was, we were really scraping, right? And we had this rule, and the rule said that if you dirty a dish, you what? You clean it. Sounds like a good rule, right? How do you think that played out practically? It didn't. Not well at all. So nobody did dishes. And so so from that premise, what I believe is that if everybody has a different definition of diversity, then it actually doesn't mean what? Anything. And so what I'd like to do is reshape or reframe how we even talk about diversity. All right? So we'll spend some time doing that. How many people have taken a diversity class or been in some kind of ethnic studies class or something like that? Okay, cool. So I have a lot of people to heal. A lot of times when we go to some of these classes, it's a very pointed way that the instructor or agenda that the instructor has that typically is not made to include white people. Do we have any people who would self-identify as being white? Please raise your hand. Okay, cool. So we're going to have some conversations about white people today, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. So let's see if this works. Yay! So this is a picture of me when I had a little longer hair, and somebody said, that's a really cool picture for a diversity trainer. And I said, I agree. And when you do your presentation, you can use whatever picture you want, right? So that is a picture of me. We're going to talk about Diversity 101, Reloaded and Recharged. It's actually not going to be a 101 class. It's more like a 500 level class, but nobody ever hires people who are trying to do 500 level classes, right? So the 101 is what we'll, the metaphor we'll use. So I'm going to show this video. important in just a second. But on page 2, I'd like to just have you write down anywhere on that page, what were some of your thoughts when you saw that? Like why do you think the kid was falling around? What do you think was going on? Just some of your thoughts anywhere on that page. All right. Let me just stop right there. So, can you tell me what was happening in the video? What was going on? Yes.
Child would only throw a fit and cry whenever the parents were visible. So
Oh.
if the parents were out of sight, the child would look for them and then throw himself on the ground.
Okay, so the child was looking for the parents before he would throw a fit. All right? As long as they were in sight, he would throw a fit.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Other folks? Yes. Okay, so he was seeking attention. All right? Yes, sir?
Seeking attention, he either wanted to be held, or he wanted to be the focal point of anybody that was in the room, so include the dog.
Okay, yes. And the funniest thing in the whole video is not the kid, it's actually the dog for me. I did see a hand over this way. Yes, sir?
The kid's probably conditioned to cry.
The kid is conditioned to cry. Okay? Yes.
I think it was the best way he knew how to communicate in that situation.
Okay, it was the best way he knew how to communicate in that situation. Yes.
Learned behaviors, yeah.
Okay, so it's learned behavior. All right. Okay, he needs attention and may not have discipline. All right. So we see what the kid is doing. Do we have a good understanding of why the kid is behaving this way? Yes.
Feel that maybe the child wasn't getting something that he wanted.
Okay, so he wasn't getting something that he wanted. Can we make the assumption that this is probably not the first time the child has done this? Okay, can we make the assumption that this is probably not the 17th time that the child has done this? All right. So why does the child continually do this kind of stuff? And he does it for one primary reason. And he will stop when this primary reason no longer is accessible to him as a tool. And why do you think he continues to do this? Yes, sir. Because it works, right? Because it works. And the interesting thing is that the parents think that they're training the child when it is clear that the child has done what? He's trained the parents, right? And he will continue to do that behavior until when? It no longer works. All right? So when we are working with the public, it's extremely important to understand that they are doing what they think what works. I have 7 nieces and nephews. 5 of them are under the age of 10, and one of my favorites. And I know you're not supposed to have favorites, but she's just so cute. Because I don't know, she's just turned 4 and she's doing that neck thing, and I don't know how she even does that. Like, where does she get that stuff from? You know. But I asked her to get me some water, and she went to the kitchen and got some water, and on her way back she spilled, and she was just kind of mortified because she did everything she thought she was supposed to. She held it with 2 hands and so forth and so on, and it became clear to me that my niece is not a psychopath. She didn't say, on step 7, I'm going to spill this water. She was doing the best she could with what she had, and for that task of bringing water to me, what she had was not enough. All right? So she needed some more skills, some more ways of learning how to deal with bringing that cup of water. All right? The same goes with our community. Very rarely do we have those individuals who set out, their life's goal and aim is to break the law. Most often they think that what they're doing is going to achieve a goal that they have for themselves. All right? So before we go further, I want to talk a little bit about my approach to diversity training and how we'll look at some things today. First of all, people can learn, change, and grow. For those of us in the helping professions, if you will, at any point that we get so jaded that there's not a part of this that we believe any longer, it's time for us to leave the profession. If we no longer believe that people can learn, change, and grow, it's time for us to go out to pasture. There are scientists, and it's funny, I was on YouTube watching this video, and this guy was talking about how black people, African Americans in America, are less intelligent than their white counterparts. And he noted things like the size of a brain, the size difference between brains, and the shapes of brains being different. And so he used all this pseudoscience to say that there are these huge differences. And unfortunately, I can't believe that. Why do you think I can't believe that? Yes, sir. Because it's never been proven, and what else? Yes, sir. He may, in fact, be an educated idiot. But the reason I can't believe that is because there are African Americans who make smart choices, and there are African Americans who make dumb choices. There are white people who make good choices, and there are white people who make bad choices, right? So what drives our level of success is our choices, our ability to make and decipher what is best for ourselves and for our families, right? So I believe that people can learn, change, and grow. And you only change your behavior when you figure out that the behavior you had before no longer what? Works, right? No longer works. All behavior is goal-directed. Everything that people do is to achieve some kind of goal. Sometimes they're aware of that. Sometimes they're not aware of that, right? For officers, what is your number one job? Protect and serve. I would say that your number one job is to go home at night. Because the protect and serve stuff can't happen if you're not around. So, if that's your number one job as a community member, what do you think my number one job is? I want to go home too, right? And if we're able to remember that, we're able to help drive a process, right? So if you have to give me a ticket, I'll take the ticket as opposed to mouthing off to you and ending up someplace else, right? And so part of what we have to also remind folks is that all human behavior is goal-directed. So if I want to help direct someone's behavior, what's one thing I must know about them? Yes, sir. I must understand their goal. I must understand their goal. And so it might, and I'm not going to tell you how to do policing, but it might be really interesting if you're in an interaction and you actually ask the person what their goal is for this interaction. That might be interesting. I don't know. All right? And people do what makes sense to them, even if it doesn't make sense to you. All right? And lastly, attitude is a response to a goal. How many, what is an attitude? What have you been told about what an attitude is? Anyone been a teenager? had attitude,
Yes, sir.
right? So what were people talking about when they referred to either your attitude or someone around you's attitude, particularly as a teenager? Yes.
Just their perception of you and how you portray yourself to everyone.
Okay, so their perception of you and how you portray yourself to everyone else. What else?
Mindset.
Okay, a mindset. All right, mindset. I've often had people talk about attitude as some kind of emotional response to some kind of stimulus or a way of adjusting my phenotype according to some information or my physical response to that. And I like to say, that stuff is true, but I like to expand the way we think about attitude a little bit further. All right. So my dad was my pastor, and on Sundays we went to church from 7 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. We stopped at 3 o'clock for chicken, not because we're black, but because chicken is delicious. All right. So all day Sunday we go to church. So Friday night I asked my dad for the car, and because my dad loves me, what does he say? No, he says yes. He loves me, right? So he says yes. I go out and have fun. I pick up my friend Dexter, and we're out tooling around. I even put gas in the car, right? So Dexter calls me on Sunday. Well, first of all, what kind of attitude do you think that I have? I asked for the car. My father said yes. I have what kind of an attitude? A positive or a good attitude. And what kind of attitude do you think I say my father has? Probably a positive, good attitude, right? So I'm positive, he's positive, everybody is okay, right? So Sunday comes, and my friend Dexter calls me, and he says, Andre, can you pick me up, and can we go to the show? The show is the movie, right, where I come from. And so, so I know what Sunday is about. It's about church all day. But I'm feeling a little gutsy, right? So I go up to my dad and I say, Dad, can I use the car? And what does my dad say? No. Not only does he say no, but he gives me a lecture. We got service transition and blah, 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 blah. And so he's giving me all of this stuff. And so I say my dad has what kind of an attitude? A negative or a bad attitude, right? Consequently, what does he say about my attitude? That I have a bad or negative attitude. So in those two scenarios, what is the one thing that helps to determine an attitude? The outcome, the other person. What's that? The response. The expectation. I would like to offer you that it is the goal that determines an attitude. When people reach their goal, what kind of attitude do they have? A positive or good attitude. If someone has a bad attitude, it is a clear indication that they are not reaching what? Their goal. Right? Because when I was a kid, my parents, we talk about attitude, and they'd say, go to your room, till you fix your attitude. Go to your room till you learn how to act. And I'd be in my room for a while, and then I'd step into the hallway, and I'd say, to be or not to be. That wasn't quite what I spent a lot of time in my room. Right? So these are some of the approaches that I think are extremely important in understanding human behavior. All right. So let's go back to why is diversity important? So we don't have a clear definition of what that is, but why is it important to at least think about that concept? Yes, sir.
Need a mixture of thought people keep growing as a society.
Okay, we need a mixture of thought to keep growing as a society. I saw another hand over here. Yes.
We learn from our differences.
We learn from our differences.
We go back to just what you're saying, the goals of the different people, trying to mesh them together to come up with a total goal that will allow everybody to succeed.
Okay, so coming up as a society as a total goal to allow everyone to succeed. saw another hand. Yes, sir.
Be able to learn and accept different cultures, like their worldviews, that'll help you get farther as a whole.
Yep. One of the best things that I love this country. The only country that I think is even comparable or close to us is Sweden. No, that was a joke. But I love this country. Love it. And the number one reason I love this country is because we wrestle with things that other countries don't. We wrestle with agreeing and disagreeing, and we do it in such a cool way that allows us to disagree and still live. Because in other countries, if you disagree, they maim, hurt, destroy you, right? But we have this great wrestling. And I don't know about you, but when I played football and wrestled, we would lift weights. And the thing about weightlifting is that there's two ways to do it. You can get puffy by lifting heavy weights, or you can get strong by extending your repetition, right? A lot of countries want to be like us, and so they're lifting heavy weights and they're getting puffy and they look like us, but over the long run, they haven't built the strengths that we have. And our strength comes from the heavy lifting of dealing with sexism, the heavy lifting of dealing with racism, of dealing with xenophobia, heterosexism. All of those things are things that we wrestle with all the time, but over the long run, they have made us stronger than people who look at us and say, well, we can just emulate that. And they haven't wrestled with some of those same things, right? So I think diversity is extremely important, and we'll talk about some other reasons and rationales as we go forward. So what I'd like for you to do on page 3, there are three things that drive human behavior, right? Maslow's hierarchy, Maslow talked about there being 6 things or 7 things as a part of his hierarchy, and I want to offer you that I was a high school teacher, so I had to break it down and be really simple. And so I like to offer you that there are 3 things that we should know. One is that people need significance. They need to feel important, right? How many of you, well, first of all, in your families, how are you significant? How is one significant in a family? What brings significance in a family? By succeeding, okay.
Contribution to the relationship.
Okay, contribution to the relationship. Supporting each other, all right? All right, let's get even more simple, right? Please raise your hand if you are the oldest child. Please raise your hand if you are the middle child. Please raise your hand if you are the youngest child. Please raise your hand if you are the only child. Significance. In your family, it means something to be the oldest child. It means something to be the middle child. It means something to be the youngest child. And it means something to be the only child, right? Significance. In your workplace, how do you get significance? How does one get significance? Yes.
Performing your job well.
Performing your job well. Yes, sir.
Achievements.
Okay, achievements. There was one more hand I saw. Yes. Okay, time in the job. So length, tenure, all that kind of stuff, right? In a family, how do you belong? Because everyone wants or needs to belong. So how do you belong to a family? Yes.
By contributing to the family.
Okay, by contributing to a family.
By being with the family.
By being with the family. And there's typically 2 ways that you are with and you contribute, and one is to be born. You're born into the family. And you can be grafted in or adopted into a family. So you have that sense of belonging. In terms of the workplace, how do you come to be a part of the workplace? How are you either grafted or adopted or born into the belonging of your workplace? Through training. What else?
Social interactions with the other people there.
Okay, social interactions with the other people there. How else? Yes, sir.
Just by being hired.
Just by being hired. You sign a contract. And you belong as long as you what? Fulfill that contract. When you stop fulfilling the contract and they stop paying you, what do you say? Bye, peace. I mean, I love all this stuff, and I would do it for free, but I don't have to. Right? All right. So significance, belonging, and a sense of safety. And these are the three things that drive human behavior. There is you've heard of Sigmund Freud and other kind of social scientists and therapists and folks like that. There is a gentleman by the name of Alfred Adler that believes that at 3 years old, you decide what kind of person you want to be. At 3 years old, you decide what kind of person you want to be. And it's funny, when I look at my nieces and nephews, I have a nephew that stutters and stammers. And very early on, he decided to take the focus off of his stuttering and stammering by telling jokes. They're the worst jokes in the world. They make absolutely no sense. But I laugh, and he keeps telling them because it makes him feel good about himself. He's decided that if I tell jokes, people won't look at my stammering and stuttering. I find it fascinating because I wonder, at 3 years old, what did I decide, and then what have I collected since I was 3 years old to define myself? And I just find that very fascinating to think about that everything around me is not things that have happened to me, but things that I've collected because I think that's who I am. So I just think that's interesting. So it's important before we go any further, it's important for you to know a little bit about me. And this is me as a baby. Oh, they're cute. And this is me and my brother and my sister. These are my grandparents. And this is my two uncles, and this is my dad. And this is my family in our Cosby years. If you look close, you can see Theo, Vanessa, and then I love Facebook and I hate Facebook all at the same time, right? Because on Facebook, I've created this persona for myself. You know, I'm highly evolved. I eat organic food. I do vermiculture. I compost. You know, I even do yoga. I do manscaping. You know, so I'm highly evolved. And people keep putting up pictures on Facebook that blow my persona that I've created. And so this is one of the pictures someone put up. This is my friend Samisha, and this is myself. And Samisha is holding in her left hand an Uzi, and I'm holding a double-barreled sawed-off shotgun in this picture. And I know that seems a little bit menacing, but let me put it in context. We were at a concert taking a picture, and I don't know if you know what the band plays, but I think just by the title of the band, you kind of get a sense of the atmosphere that we were in. And the name of the band was Public Enemy. All right, so we're at a Public Enemy concert and all that kind of stuff. And I have to say, I am my father's son. I am my father's son. In 1968, what was happening in the world at large? Vietnam. What else? Civil rights. What else? Space race. All right. I have to tell you this. My parents are African American, and I am African American. I didn't want you to be alarmed. I just had to put that out there. What event happened in 1968 that could have had a huge impact on my African American parents? The murder and assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. At that same year, my dad turned 18, graduated from high school, and said, I want to do something about the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. And these two folks said, great, do it someplace else, right? Because they weren't having this foolishness. They had gotten into the suburbs, living a life fantastic. They had a ringer washer, which was top of the line back in the day. So they weren't having all that foolishness. And so my father went off to college, and he joined a group called the Black Panthers. Now, I don't know what you know about Black Panthers or what you think you know about Black Panthers, but primarily they were a political party. And one of the remnants of the Panther Party's existence is something called the Federal School Lunch Program, which basically says that we should feed kids before we send them off to class. All right? And so that's one of the remnants. But there are other things that made the Panthers more, if you will, notorious or infamous, which was they understood that they had the right to do what? Protest and bear arms. And there's something about a bunch of angry black men with guns that strikes the fear in the hearts and minds of people everywhere. And so the Panthers did that. So they understood that they had the right to bear arms. So my dad was equipped with his standard issue afro, leather jacket, and 9mm with 2 in the clip, because my mother wasn't playing that. She said you get 2, right? So my father joins the revolution, and then in 1970, the most amazing, incredible, beautiful thing that could ever happen to my father happens. I'm born. And at that point, he realizes that the revolution is no place for a family, there's no health care in the revolution, and the retirement plan for revolutionaries sucks, right? So he leaves the revolution, and he gets a regular job, an L7 square job. Shout out to Rick James. So he gets this job, and on this job, he gets a call from God. Now, what happens when you get a call from God? You answer, right? And it's funny, I was in another training, and the guy said, you run. And I'm like, where? Where do you run? Right? So God calls my father to be an evangelical, fire and brimstone, Bible-thumping preacher. Hallelujah. Yeah! I am my father's son. In my presentation, it might seem like we are getting a little bit political. It's not my fault. I'm my father's son. It also might seem like I'm preaching to the choir, but in the words of my father, the choir needs preaching too. All right? So I want you to engage me and challenge and push yourselves in ways that you may not have thought or challenged yourself before. All right? So let's do this. On page 5, no, I'm sorry, on page 4, what I'd like for you to do in those circles, I'd like for you to put one thing that you value in each one of those circles. One thing that you value in each one of those circles. So it could be a noun, it could be a concept, it could be an individual, it could be a vehicle. One thing that you value in each one of those circles. So what I'd like to do is play a game. And the game is very simple. What I'd like for you to do is to find two people in this room that share one of the things that you wrote on your paper. Either it's on their paper or it's just something that they can agree to. All right? Once you find those individuals, what I'd like for them to do is put their initials in your circle. One person cannot sign your paper more than twice. All right? So one person can't sign your paper more than twice. You need two individuals for each one of the things that you value. All right? Any questions? All right? I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to do so. You may begin now.
Absolutely.
Two people to sign for each one of your circles. So two people to sign for each one of your circles.
I have family, friends, my dog.
I got my family.
I know you'll have your dog, right? Yes, ma'am.
There you go.
Oh, maybe I should mind you.
Oh, yeah. Peterson? Give me something good. Oh, I know, calves. Integrity? Money? Anything else going Technology.
Let's see here. Freedom, education, happiness, any of those? No, sir?
Well, different words, same meaning. Yeah.
In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and game over. Cool. Was there anyone that was able to get all 10 people? That got 10 people signed? Oh, cool. Anyone get 9? 8? All right. 7? All right. 6? 5? Cool. So as you were going around the room, were there things that you were delighted by or surprised by or really intrigued by as you either looked at somebody else's or someone responded to what you had on your paper? Were there things that delighted you or surprised you or just interested you that you're going around the room? Yes, sir.
I was surprised that nobody else had light. There was one person that I heard walking around.
Okay.
Maybe I was wrong.
No. You weren't wrong. You just were surprised that none of the people you ran into had life, right? Cool. Well, yes.
I was surprised that it seemed like everyone's sheet that I looked at had at least one or two of these.
Okay. So at least one or two of yours were the same with the people you interacted with. All right. Cool. Other things. Were there things that people said when you saw someone else that you were like, oh man, I should have put that on mine, or I wish I had one more circle? What were some of those things that you saw? Happiness. All right. Yes.
Freedom, sir.
Freedom. All right. What else?
My wife.
Your wife. You wish other people valued your wife. All right. I know what you mean, sir. I know what you mean. All right. Cool. Was there anything on your paper that you didn't get signed that you're like, man, why didn't anybody sign that? Yes. Oxygen. Please raise your hand if you value oxygen, even if it wasn't written on your paper. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes. Career. Please raise your hand if you value your career, even if it wasn't written on your paper. Yes, sir.
I had acceptance.
Acceptance of.
Just in general, being able to be like accepted into a group or.
Okay. Yeah. Please raise your hand if you value that, even if that wasn't written on your paper. You value acceptance or being accepted. Okay. Cool. One of the things that I did before I came to work for Anoka County was that I spent 8 years in the classroom. And what I will tell you is a lot of the things that I'm sharing with you today are things that I learned as a teacher in the classroom. I thought I knew what I was doing as a teacher when I walked in, but my students taught me that I was absolutely wrong. And so they had to reteach me about what it meant to be a teacher. And so, I'm going to share a lot of stuff that I learned as a teacher from my students with you. And so one of the things that we would do is, one of the first days of class, we do an exercise like this. And why do you think we would do an exercise like this the first day of class? Yes, sir.
Show that we value a lot of things that are in common.
To show that we value a lot of things that are in common. A lot of times, particularly when we talk about diversity, we end up talking about things that make us different, ways in which we're separated. We are so much more alike than we are dissimilar. The things that our families want, the ways that we try to approach living is so much, the basic values are so similar that the differences almost don't matter. Any servicemen or women? Anyone served in the armed services? When you're in training and when you're in combat, all of those other things, the social strata, the gender makeup, all that stuff comes secondary to the primary goal and mission of executing what you're supposed to do. And a lot of times we spend way too much time talking about things that ultimately aren't that important. But we need to spend some time talking about the things that are important. Like my ability to raise my family the way you would raise your family, right? So we'll spend some time talking about that. I thank you for playing that game with me, because I enjoy that kind of stuff. So I want to move on to do a video clip because I want to try to honor this as much as possible. So try and take that break right around 9:20, 9:30 or so. All right. So we'll come back to some other things on page 3 after we watch this video and whatnot. And so I have a guilty pleasure that I must confess to you. And I must confess that I like watching Dances with the Stars. I know, it is bad. I really got addicted when they had Priscilla Presley on there. I guess that's probably about 3 seasons ago. And the interesting thing was that I saw Priscilla Presley as Elvis's wife, the queen of rock and roll kind of thing, And then I saw her in all those airplane movies with O.J. Simpson. You know, I was just like, you know, she was just so attractive. She was like the white woman to really, you know, go after. Her and Jamie Summers, Bionic Woman, and Wonder Woman. Those were the, well, and not to forget Jane Kennedy. She was the other, you know, of the white women. No, she wasn't white. I was just joking. But I really love Priscilla Presley. And it was just interesting because she's older now, right? And she was doing Dancing with the Stars stuff, and she's kicking her legs up and all this, and doing backflips and all this kind of stuff. And that was impressive. But the thing that was even more impressive was the fact that her facial expressions never changed. She had so much Botox that she just looked scared the whole time, you know. And so I watched that. And so after Dancing with the Stars came the show called What Would You Do? And many of you have probably seen this or seen episodes of the show. And what they do is they create ethical dilemmas, and then they see how ordinary, regular people respond to those ethical dilemmas. And so what I like to do is show a clip of one of those ethical dilemmas and have some conversation about that. All right? So I will get that started right now. Right now. Now. This is the thing about working with technology, small animals, and children. They don't always do what you want them to do when you want them to do it. So, all right. So we'll just skip that and go to the DVD. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so don't read this. This says I'm not supposed to show this in front of large groups of people. Over here, over here, over here. Or they'll sue me because I have no money. All right? So don't. Any questions, comments, observations?
Hello, and welcome to the opening show of our primetime series, What Would You Do? If you see something and you think it's wrong, do you step in or do you step away? What people say and what they do aren't always the same. That's why our hidden cameras are so revealing. In our first scenario, we weren't sure what to expect when our opinionated man behind the counter meets the Muslim woman in a headscarf.
Deep in the heart of Texas, at this little roadside bakery, bigotry is being served with a coffee and bagel.
No, ma'am. We don't serve Muslims here.
I'm sorry?
This is America. We're at war with your people.
I don't know what you think I am, President Apple.
Well, you're a terrorist, is what you are. So,
Excuse me?
you gotta take your business elsewhere. We don't serve your kind.
The other customers at this bakery near Waco seem to hear everything, but they barely look at the Muslim woman, even when the language is tough to take.
Get back on the camel and go back wherever you came from.
Sir, I'm an American. I was born and raised
No,
in
you're
this
not.
country.
Americans don't wear towels on their head.
Muslim Americans say these are words they hear all the time in all parts of the country. But here at the bakery, what the customers don't know is that this Muslim woman and the man behind the counter are actors. The bakery is working with us, all part of a primetime hidden camera experiment on prejudice and patriotism.
Please take your business elsewhere. Am I asking too much?
When no one even tries to help her, she makes a direct appeal.
Sir, would you mind ordering me an apple? That's why I'm here. I can give you the money. I know
shoulder, he finally just leaves. You could have helped her out. You could have spoken up. Why not?
Me speak up for her? Well, if he tried to do some harm to her or something, then I would have.
But why not try to set him straight?
I really think that a person that owns his own business should be able to say food. Right. Self-safe.
She's not American.
Others seem to agree with our actor as to who's an American and who's not. Is it all based on the way we look?
I'm an American citizen, I just would like an active pseudo, please.
Well, I'm sorry, then why don't you dress like an American? You're
This
so
is for
American.
religious purposes, sir, and I don't think you have any right to say anything.
So I'm religious, I don't wear, Halloween costumes around. I mean, am I wrong here, sir? I run my business the way I want to run it.
That's right. Don't come in here without confusing shirt on.
This customer is adamant. The man behind the counter is doing the right thing. But the fact is, it's against the law to deny service to someone based on their race or religion.
My name is John Quinones, and I'm with ABC News. What did you think of what you heard?
I didn't hear anything racist.
He told her he wouldn't serve her.
Well, he can say he would serve you. You come in barefooted without a shirt on?
But she wasn't barefoot or without a shirt on.
Well, she wasn't dressed right.
What do you mean?
If I run a place, I'd do the same thing.
You wouldn't let Muslims shop at your store?
I sure would.
We never expected customers to be so candid.
How do I know you don't have a bomb in there?
Watch what happens this time, when, once again, our Muslim woman is denied service
This is not right.
and again leaves.
I mean, we reserve the right to not serve. That's right, sir.
That's right. That's, I appreciate saying that. I think that's the first time I've ever seen that.
He not only commends the man behind the counter for his discriminatory behavior, but he gives him the thumbs up, not once, but twice,
Good job.
as he leaves.
Can I talk to you, sir, for a second?
But when I approach,
Sir, we're with ABC News.
there is no thumbs up for me.
We staged a little experiment in there to see how people would react. That kind of attitude.
I'm American.
I am an American.
That man took it a bit farther, telling me I'm not an American.
Who's threatened?
Jack DeVideo is a social psychologist at Yale University.
So if we as Americans feel threatened from the outside, we're going to define ourselves in very rigid fashion. Either you're with me, and if you're not really one of me, then you must be somebody else who's against me.
The young woman in our experiment is an actor, but for this woman, discrimination is all too real. Nahaya Javed helped us design our experiment. Although born in Chicago, she says she's constantly characterized by fellow Americans as the enemy.
They always start off with you're a terrorist, a Osama lover, towelhead, camel jockey, on and on.
While attending college in Texas, she says she continually suffered verbal abuse and has even been physically attacked just because she's Muslim.
They assume I'm not from here, and if I tell them I'm American, they're like, no, you're not. Just because you were born here doesn't make you American. And I'm like, so what makes you American?
It's a daily battle.
And I don't feel like living in America, I should have to fight this battle.
Meanwhile, back at the bakery, our actor is at it again.
But how do I know you're not a terrorist? Terrorists look like you.
But this time the customers are sympathizing with the Muslim woman.
Right, I know, but can you blame me?
Yeah, I can't blame you, actually.
Why? What's the problem?
Hey, we'll get out of here. You don't actually we need to do.
Okay, sir. I'm a good American, all right? We're at war with these people.
My dad's a better. Go yourself.
So is mine.
And he's not the only one who walks out in anger.
Excuse me? No, you're a bad American.
Time and again, people speak out with their pocketbooks. But look what happens when this man threatens to leave.
You're not a good American, sir.
I believe I am a good American. My son just came back from serving in the Army for over a year in Iraq, and that has nothing to do with her right. I understand that,
And I hear what you're saying. But
I can't believe you would be so discriminatory. I'm deeply offended by that.
I'm sorry to offend you, sir, but I've got to live with myself.
Seething, the man vows to fight back.
I will let people know this. I've stopped here every time I've come by this place, and I'll never stop here again.
Why do folks get so upset?
It's injustice. It's justice that binds us together. It's justice that makes us a society. Any threat to that kind of sense of justice and fairness undermines the entire system.
No. No, I'm not.
Perhaps that's why more customers are outraged by our actors' hateful behavior than approve of it.
You're not dressed like an American.
But no one is more persistent than these two young women who can't believe what they're hearing.
Take a jihad, take it back out to the parking lot.
Excuse me?
I mean, I gotta protect my customers, okay?
Really offensive, disgusting.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to protect
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
You're
sick.
sick.
How do you know? These people are trying to kill Americans.
It is my culture, so you're ready to serve me, but you're not ready to serve her.
You're obviously dressed like an American.
She's Muslim.
And unlike the others, they don't just lead in anger, they stand their ground.
So you're gonna regulate what people wear?
Yes, because I
Are
believe
you
the
the
degree of...
manager?
No, I'm not the manager.
Can I speak to your manager?
I'm John Quinones with ABC News.
It's only when we catch up with our heroines that they finally let their guards down.
I'm with my friend, he's, Muslim, and but yeah, I've seen how people treat them differently. And earlier,
Just watching them stand up for what they believe in touches Professor Davidia.
In a way, they defended America. And I was impressed by that, because they wanted this to be a just society, a just place, just image.
I'm John Quinones.
And remember this man whose son served in Iraq? He's also removed to tears.
Every person deserves to be treated with respect and dignity, no matter every situation, no matter how they're dressed.
Never have we seen reactions so full, from a thumbs up for prejudice to an emphatic thumbs down. Two different Americas, both convinced they're patriotic. At the end of the day, 13 people stood up for the Muslim woman, while 6 sided with the clerk. But the majority of the bystanders, 22, did or said absolutely nothing. That's what's most frightening to Muslims like Nahaya, who was watching our experiment. In fact, so frightening that they often avoid going out by themselves.
it's really sad because I'm old enough to be able to do things by myself. I shouldn't need a chaperone all the time. But that one time that I'm alone and something bad might happen, I'd rather be safe than sorry. I am Naya.
It's no wonder this young woman was so moved by the people who came forward to protect a stranger who just happens to be Muslim.
Thank you so much for what you did, and I wish more people would do these types of things. And
I do too.
it would make my life a lot easier.
I'll go with you.
All right, so anywhere on that page, if you could just write some of your reflections. What are some of the things you thought? Oop, sorry. What came up for you? What you think? And also on page 4, if you could answer those 2 questions. Why do you think it's difficult for people to act on their beliefs? And think of a time that you had a tough decision to make. What fueled you to make your selection? right, so let's. So I'm interested on your reflections first before we get to those two particular questions. What were some of your reflections about what you saw in the clip? Yes, sir.
The most frustrating thing for me wasn't the people that were on the extreme sides of the spectrum, but the ones that just stood there and couldn't have the courage to stand up and do it and walk away from all.
Okay, so it was frustrating for you to see those 22 individuals who didn't do anything. Okay, yes.
To me, it was disappointing to see that these ignorant views were just instilled in these people, and just the thought that they're in our society, that they're reproducing and they're instilling these horrible views on their children, so that the cycle's not going to stop if they continue like this.
Okay, so that these horrible people were still in our society, and they're birthing.
Not necessarily horrible people, but their views are ignorant.
Okay, so these ignorant people are breeding
Well, not that
in
they're
our
breeding,
society.
but their views, they're breeding their views.
They're breeding their views. Okay, yes, sir.
The 13 that spoke out in defense of the woman, I felt a sense of pride.
Okay.
Thinking, I don't know how I would react, but I'm proud that there are people out there that will step up and do the right thing.
Okay, so you're proud that there are people who will step up and do the right thing, and you don't know how you would respond, but okay, yes, sir.
I felt disgrace in the people that Rudy was talking about, how we're fighting the end, that we're fighting love, and having served before the duty, knowing that's not what it is, and see people agreeing with that guy saying that that's what we're doing, is just disgraceful.
Okay, so you felt disgrace that he was speaking for you things that weren't true. Okay, yes, sir.
I was going to kind of go on the line with that. People's lack of knowledge. They'll agree with things that they're not even knowledgeable about. They think they have a grasp on it when it's basically ignorance. They don't know what exactly, the war being fought was not in that context, and they perceive it as that, and then all of a sudden they start spreading that view that Muslim people are the enemy per se, and that's not the case.
Okay, so people go off of misinformation or bits and pieces of information. Yes, I saw another. Yes.
I agree with everything you said, and I feel the same way about it. One of the things that I've done as a wonder, and I try to learn from this, and I raised my son. Where did these people learn it? And you said yourself, I am my father's son. You just instilled in them as children, people inherit these opinions, attitudes from childhood, or what development?
This is the answer. This. The old person did what made sense to him. What other things did you notice about those people in the bakery? Yes, sir.
So age seemed to play a factor.
Age seemed to play some kind of factor, right? Yeah. The oldest guy that they filmed, what do you think life was like when he was growing up? Very segregated. More than likely, it was probably a segregated society. And so he's operating off of those norms and those values that worked in 1930s and 1950s, and he's operating off those values now. Because what? In the past, it worked for him. So part of our human nature says that if it's worked in the past, the logical conclusion is if I do it again, it will what? It will work again. And I keep doing it until what? It stops working. What's the problem with his way of looking at the world, the way he's thinking? It doesn't work anymore, right? That's not a way to win friends and build good relationships with family members, to be hateful. Doesn't work anymore, right? And he's doing it because it makes sense to him, and if he is able to achieve his goal, it works. one of the things I thought was really interesting in that is when they go to question him, he said, what's his response? What's the first thing that comes out of his mouth? I didn't hear anything racist. Did anybody ask him about anything racist? Right? No, we didn't even ask him anything about race. He's like, oh, I didn't say anything racist. Ha, clue. Right? So, let me get back to some other stuff. Why do you think why do you think it's difficult for people to act on their beliefs? Afraid of discrimination?
People don't want to stand out in a group.
People don't want to stand out in a group? Yes, ma'am. Okay, they're afraid of criticism and harm. All right? Now, we did say we had some white people in here. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, a lot of, and I'll go through a lot of stuff, and a lot of other diversity trainers don't necessarily, I don't have a lot of diversity trainer friends because some of the ways that I think and talk and the things that I do. And so, what I think is really interesting, particularly for white people, is that there is one word that I can use to stop a white person in their track, in their tracks, just freeze them. And it's the same. It's the same kind of thing that my wife and I do. Like she'll throw out this one word, and then there's no more communication that can happen. Right. So in my relationship with my wife, if she says this, then there's no more communication that can happen. She wins. And what my wife says to me is, "You're being defensive." When she says that, we can no longer communicate. Because if I say something, then what? I'm defending myself. I'm being defensive. If I don't say anything, then she says what? I told you so. So here you go, right? So this is one thing that gets used, and it just freezes white people. There's no more conversation that can happen because white people do not know what to do when this happens. They turn into big globs of mush. And that's when someone calls a white person racist. No more communication can happen, right? Because if you try to defend yourself, then you're being defensive. So, yep, there it is, right? But then if you don't say anything, then they say, what? So there it is, right there. You can't say anything because you feel guilty about it, right? One of the things that I want to ask white people is that if someone calls you racist, like what happens to you? Now, personally, I'm not talking about professionally, but personally, what happens to you? You feel hurt, okay? Does your bank account get smaller? No. Okay. Does a limb fall off? No. Are you in some way disfigured by that comment? No. One of the things that is important for us to understand, and it's so funny because the same thing happens with black folks. It happens with other people of color where there are certain words that stop conversation from happening. Part of it we have to do is listen to what people are saying, take it at face value, question ourselves. So maybe there is something that I'm doing that might be labeled as that, but how do I move on from that and not get stuck there? All right? So those are some things to think about. I want to talk a little bit about the negative sixes, and then we'll take a break because I want to try to stay on this schedule. So the negative sixes, those are the individuals who, how will we label those people? The guy that gave the thumbs up for treating a woman poorly, the other guy that was like no shoes, no wrong clothing, shouldn't get served. What do we say about those folks, or what do we call those folks? Anyone? Yes. That they're being biased. Okay. What else do we call them, or what do we say about those folks? call them racist. What else do we call them? Ignorant. What else do we call them? Narrow-minded. We also call them bigoted, right? Now, when we call them those things, do they say, thank you so much, I appreciate that. Now I know how to fix my problem. Do they ever say that? No. What do they typically say? No, I'm not. I mean, if we'd ask any of those people, first of all, does anybody know someone who's a racist? Do they have an official racist card? Is there a membership? Do they pay dues? You know, right? If you ask people who act in these ways, typically they will say, I'm not racist. And are they encouraged to join your team when you call them those names? When you say, you're a bigot, or you're a sexist, or you're blah, blah, blah. So they go, thank you so much. Now I'm ready to make some change. Does that happen? No. If anything that happens, they disconnect themselves from you. Now, it's real interesting. I was, so I don't have cable. I watch most of my TV and news on, over the internet on my computer and that kind of stuff. But if I were to get cable, I would like kind of an a la carte menu, because 5,000 channels, really, but so these are the channels I'd like to have. I'd like to have the History Channel, Animal Planet, and Cartoon Network. I like cartoons. Cartoons, right? But I'm watching the Animal Planet, and they have this. They're doing this coven of wolves, this pack of wolves, and they're following them through their life stages and all this kind of stuff. And before I say anything else, there's no hospital in the forest. I found that out, right? So there's no hospital in the forest. So they're following this wolf family along and all this kind of stuff, and they go hunt this elk. So the pack is going for this elk, and they're all over the elk, and the elk is fighting, and he kicks one of the wolves, breaks his hip. What now becomes that wolf's destiny? Death, right? Because there are no hospitals in the forest, right? So what does that wolf decide? He now knows that his destiny is death, and what does he decide? What's best for the pack? Well, they typically don't eat other wolves. That would just be disgusting. But he decides that what's best for the pack is that he leaves. But what do we know about wolves? How well do lone wolves do? Not very well, right? But for the sake of the pack, he leaves so that he can go off and die alone. Anyone see Marley and Me? Seen that movie? I cried like a baby. So touching. But he goes off to die by himself and alone. And oftentimes, these sixes, when we cut them off, we give them the destiny that wolf shares. We disconnect them from our human relationships. And so if you have a sick person and you cut that person off, we're social animals. So what does this number 6 do? He's a social animal. He's been cut off from his original pack. What does he do? He either dies alone or he does what? He finds another pack. And typically the pack that he joins is just as sick as he is. And so then they start breeding what kind of pack members? Other sick pack members, right? So what I'd like to suggest is that it's not helpful to label these folks bigots or racists. It's not helpful to disconnect that uncle or that aunt that has a foul mouth or ways that you think that you're too good to respond to. That's not helpful, because everything that they know, everything that they've done is part of some kind of learned behavior. All right? Now, I'll tell a quick story and then we'll take a break. So I live in Mounds View, Minnesota. I'm not sure if folks know where that is. And it is not a diversity mecca. I will say that, right? And so I'm taking an early lunch. It's a Saturday. I'm doing an early lunch thing. So I go into a restaurant. I won't name it because you may stop by there at some point, and I don't want to be sued. But so I go into this restaurant, and I sit down at the bar. And one of the things that I kind of feel for women, because now I look for my signs of safety when I'm in areas that aren't known for their diversity, right? So I'm looking for all the exits. I'm looking at who's in the bar, and I notice this dude is red-faced and at the end of the bar, and it's about 10:30. So there are two things that I know about this dude. One is that he comes here a lot, and secondly, that the bar folks know him because he couldn't be this drunk this early in the morning if they didn't know this guy, right? So I'm assuming like he thinks that this is his home. And so I notice him, and so I notice everyone else, and so I'm focused, so I just grab my menu, I order my stuff, I close my menu, give it back to the bartender, and that guy has moved from the end of the bar right next to me. Now, I don't know about you, but being in high school and wrestling and playing football, I can fight, So I'm not afraid of that, right? But drunk people are just so unpredictable. You never know what you're going to get, right? And so he sits next to me, and we do our small talk stuff. We talk about the Vikings and the Twins and the Timberwolves and all that kind of stuff. And then he breaks into his thesis as to why he sat with me. And he says to me, you know what? I don't like niggers. That's one heck of an introduction. All right? So I'm thinking, how do I respond to that? So I'm like, I'm a Minnesotan, so I try to keep it Minnesota nice, and so I try to change the subject. And so I try to talk about something else, and then something in my spirit said, go back to that. Go back to that. So I go back to it, and I asked him, I said, well, when you use that word, what do you mean? And he said, I mean ghetto, ignorant, disrespectful, so forth and so on. I had all this list of bad stuff. And so I looked at him and I said, well, do you know any white people who fit that description? And he looks at me and he says, yeah. And so then we start talking about other stuff, and we move on to other stuff. And then he comes back to me and he says, you know what, I don't like niggers, but I like you. Not sure what to do with that either, right? And so I say, well, what is it about me that you like? And he says, you seem cool-headed, you seem, intelligent, just like a really cool guy. And I said, what if all the black people that you've met, that you call that word, were just idiots? What if all those people that you've met, that you describe as that word, were idiots, and everybody else that you do not know is just like me? And he looks at me and he goes, I gotta pee. So he gets up and he goes to the bathroom, and I'm like, phew. So I'm paying for my stuff, and I'm closing up my menu. I got my bag. I'm headed out the door. I'm like, yes, no confrontation. This is good. As I hit the door, guess who meets me at the door? This guy. But he looks a little bit different. His hair is combed over to the side. He's got droplets of water, and he's got a damp napkin. And he reaches out to me and he says, my name is Jeff, and I have chickens. If you ever need fresh eggs, give me a call. So what do you think I did? I took the napkin, and of course I'm not calling this dude. Yeah? But I took the napkin, I went my way, and he went his way. The negative sixes have learned how to live in the world. What did I have every right to give this dude a piece of my mind? I mean, he called me out of my name. He was disrespectful to me. Couldn't I just, if I'd have punched him in the nose, would anybody really have been mad at me? Probably not. But had I done that, what would have happened?
It would have just further, fueled the flames for him to think that.
I would have not only fueled the flames, what else would have happened? Yes, sir.
Would have validated what he thinks.
I'd have validated everything that he thought about people who he thought looked like me. Right? I would not suggest using that word. All right, I used it for the story. I don't give license to use that word. It's not a part of my vernacular either. I did it for the purposes of the story. But oftentimes we fall into traps and don't think about how we could teach folks, how we could help people learn. I know that guy grew up in a world where that behavior worked for him and is a learned behavior, and he's doing the best he can with what he had. And so it was my opportunity to give him something different so he could see the world in a different way. All right? I went 5 minutes over. So can we take a 10-minute break and come back at 1:45?
Yes,
sir. Thank you very much.
Class, just for a second, before we head on, I know it's break time. There's a few things I want to address. Any memos or entries, get them into us as soon as possible. If you have your sheets ready, turn in for inspection, turn them in. I have a couple names you need to sign, Owens and Smith and Dix and Thor, you need to sign your sheets. Cadet Cleveland, I only have one sheet from you. We need to get the new cadets, their names on the papers for their bags. So take care of that. And we'll address the rest of the stuff next break, so you guys have time. So,
I'll make myself available at 10:30 in the men's restroom for those of you that need help with your tuck. 10:30 at that break.
Will you help us the next break
Yeah.
then?
You want to do it now?
Because I want to say the bottom just a drawer in my billet or in my room. Bottom just a drawer in the room that was assigned to me is number 205 will not open. Check.
Why? You think it was like
I gotta tell him. Could have just opened that today.
Oh.
It's because on Monday I try opening it. The little faceplate. Can't be there. Yeah. So it's 2 minutes good enough.